Welcome. You're watching Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life, with your host, Danny Pabone and Rifle Scudder.
Welcome to another episode of Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life. As always, I'm joined here by my friend Rifle. Rifle, how are you doing, sir?
Doing very well, thanks, Danny. How about yourself?
Doing good, doing good. The good weather is finally coming.
Spring
Uh,
has sprung. Yes, my friend,
yes,
spring is here. It's in the air.
we're having a couple of days in the 60s and 70s over here, so that's good. And then the occasional dropping down back to 35.
Yeah, it's very cold in the morning, but in the afternoon, the Harley Davidson is roaring. It's beautiful
Ah,
weather for the bike
it's,
right now.
it's the Harley Davidson season.
There you go.
Well, everyone, in today's episode, we are going to talk about the British and Irish Lions Tour, which is another series that happens every 4 years, and we'll take a not a deep dive, but a brief history of the tour. And it's just another set of games of rugby that are going to occur this summer. So, as we have spoken about before, Rifle, we have first in international rugby, we have the British Irish Lions Tour. Then we have the Rugby Championship Series, which is a series that occurs between the Southern Hemisphere, you know, Tier 1 nations. And we also have the Women's World Cup, which is going to be hosted by England this summer as well. So, like we've said before, a lot of rugby action this year in the summer. So, that's going to be pretty cool to watch.
Definitely something to look forward to. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some good games there. So looking forward to all of that.
Yes, yes. And this will be my first time experiencing all these different series and the World Cup, Women's World Cup. So it's going to be very exciting to watch. So let's get right to it. So here we go, folks. This British and Irish Lions tour, which again is going to be played. I believe the first game is the end of June, June 20th, or the one of the warm-up matches, I should say, and we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. So, um, the British and Irish Lions Tour is a team that is selected amongst the national team of England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and hence that's why it's called the British and Irish Lions Tour. And the first tour was in 1888. Well, not actually, not the first tour. The first time they started touring and what we is known as the British and Irish Lions Tour now. The first year they started touring the Southern Hemisphere was in 1888, because I believe before then they used to tour other countries, but the way people know the British and Irish Lions Tour now, that first tour of the Southern Hemisphere teams was in 1888. And the tour rotates between countries of New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia. And starting in 1989, the tour took place every 4 years. And the actual tour consists of three test matches played against the national team of the host nation. So, again, we'll get into this. This year's 2025, the host nation is going to be Australia. And in 2021, the host nation was South Africa. We're going to talk a little bit about that 2021 tour as well in the episode. So that's pretty cool. And I've actually watched some highlights. So that was a pretty interesting tour, needless to say, that we'll get into in a few minutes as well. And also there's warm up matches played against what is considered club level teams of the host nation. And the interesting thing, Rifle, is starting in 2021, they essentially added a game in which they play another national team from another country. So in 2021, they played Japan. And this year, 2025, they are going to play Argentina, the Argentine national rugby team. So yeah, that's a tradition that they started in 2021, and I believe, um, and for all the British and Irish Lions tour historians out there, if I misspeak, please forgive me. This is just stuff that I've read, so and it's just fascinating because there's so much history in this in the Lions tour. There's so much history and wonderful history. So, and I believe they created a trophy for this game against the national team that they started in 2021. I think it's called the 1888 Cup. So essentially, it's the trophy for whoever wins the the first game of the tour, which is the British and Irish Lions against another country's national rugby team. So that's pretty cool.
I didn't know about that cup though.
Again, this is something I've read. I may be
Okay.
wrong. I may have misunderstood. So again, the lines to historians, please forgive me if I have that wrong. But
We'll
from
soon
what I
find out.
understand, yes, yes, we will. And if we get any comments from historians, it's like this Danny guy's an idiot. Doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, I am. So yeah, that's a little brief history of the tour, and then obviously once the tour start playing the tour, I'm gonna be excited and looking forward to actually talking about the different games and things like that. So um, let's get to the 2021 campaign. And if you're watching this podcast for the very first time, my friend Rifle is originally from South Africa, and the 2021 campaign actually took place in South Africa. And so yeah, so it was pretty cool. So I'm sure you watched this series, Rifle, and interested to hear about your experience and just the experience you had watching these games.
Yeah, obviously, my greatest memory, I did watch it. The greatest memory is just unfortunately COVID. You
Yes.
know, it was happening during the COVID. So, the Springboks they had a really, really rough time. South Africa is one of the worst clamped down nations. I mean, they could not play any rugby at all.
Mm.
So while other teams still had opportunities to play, the Springboks weren't allowed at all. So it was tough for them to get together when they could, and then they had to quickly do everything before for the tour. And then when they played, nobody was in the stands. It was
Yeah.
just wasn't right, when you watched it. But a great series, and once again, as we've said so many times, it literally came down to the last second of the game with a nail biting kick. And Morne Steyn, who came on, who's retired, and they brought him back. He has a magical boot on him, and just right in the end, I believe someone went up. They went into the air, took someone out without them playing the ball or without their feet on the ground. You're not allowed to do that. And South Africa got a penalty
Mm.
just in their own half, and Mornay lined it up. And if he kicked the kick over, South Africa won the series. If he missed, it was a win for the British and Irish Lions. And he struck that ball and it went straight through the post and broke all British and Irish Lions' hearts. And South Africa won again by the skin of their teeth. So it was very, very nerve wracking. But as I say, the biggest takeaway was just the memory of COVID with empty stands and nobody watching it. It wasn't nice at all. So a great tour, good rugby played, and it's always it. I mean, it is big when the British and Irish Lions play, but especially against South Africa. You know, if you go to YouTube, if you watch the previous, so 12 years before when South Africa play, one of the headlines on one of the YouTube videos is the most violent rugby game ever played, and that was South Africa against the British and Irish Lions. I mean, these two, I say these two teams have lost no love between each other, and they get on that field and it's absolute war. So it was a game, but there was good rugby. And another thing that will not be the same this year, unfortunately, is if you look at the 21 British and Irish Lions, starting from their captain, you know, so many Welsh players there. If you look at the team photo, you've got, you know, Gats there, who's the coach. And if you look at Welsh rugby, this is just 4 years later. It's a sad state of affairs. So within the last 4 years, you know, Wales from where they were to where they are right now, it's just they've gone downhill so bad. But in that specific team, a captain, they had Dan Biggar. I mean, they had so many amazing Welsh players, which we won't unfortunately see in the summer when Australia play the British and Irish Lions, just because of the state of Welsh rugby. So that's two or three things that I remember about the series against South Africa.
Yeah, you bring up COVID, and I was watching couple of highlight videos of the 2021 campaign of the Lions tour. And yeah, it was just, obviously this was a worldwide thing. And I remember watching NFL games with no people in the stands, and yeah, it was just so weird. And being able to, it was interesting because at least in the NFL, you had the fans, you know, 70, 80,000 fans. And the players were able, the quarterbacks or the offense were able to call the calls and not worried about the other team hearing them.
Yeah.
But during COVID, it was like a pin. You could hear a pin drop because there's no 80,000 fans talking and, shouting.
Yeah.
It was interesting because you could hear the offense had to go, usually they're like maybe 5-6 yards away from the defense. They had to go like 10, 15, 20 yards away from the defense so that the defense wouldn't hear the play calling and all that stuff. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was an interesting time in sports, not seeing
And obviously,
fans.
it all made perfect sense because in rugby, you don't really get close to your opponent. You
Mm.
are 6 feet away from everyone else on the field throughout the whole game, and you're never going to touch anyone else. So there's no chance of anyone getting any infectious disease from anyone. And after you've scrummed and you got a red card because you went to the sin bin, you went and sat in your little chair 6 foot away for 6 meters, whatever, away from everyone else with your mask on. And then when the 10 minutes was over, you came back, took the mask off, and went scrumming this far away from someone else's breath and spit and face and tackling and rucking in the malls. So this is just me being facetious, but it made perfect sense at the time of don't have anyone there, but these guys can scrum and maul and ruck and tackle, and they'll be fine. No one's going to get sick. So it was just the craziest of times watching the game, thinking, oh my goodness, all these rules and laws, no one's allowed in the stadium, but these guys are just, murdering each other on the field, but they'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of crazy situations in COVID
Yeah.
that that we won't get into, but
No, I'll just leave it there.
what happened happened.
Yeah, if you have to edit that, just edit it out. It's good.
I mean, no, I mean that's just life, you know. Uh, uh, One thing before we move on to continue to talk about the 2021 campaign is my favorite during COVID was you're at a restaurant, you have to wear your mask, and then you pull your mask down to eat. I'm like, okay, so what's the point of wearing a mask in a restaurant? I mean, you
Yeah,
still gotta eat, you still gotta put it down, and but whatever.
yeah,
But again, we digress.
right.
So yeah, that was one of the very interesting themes about this 2021 campaign was the whole COVID situation, and the Lions played I believe again from what I've read. So please, historians, don't yell at me if I'm wrong. Um, but from what I read, I believe the Lions were supposed to play the Bulls, but the Bulls had a COVID outbreak, so they had to, you know, what's the word? They weren't able to play because they had a COVID outbreak. So the Lions played the Sharks twice, but originally they were supposed to play the Sharks and then the Bulls the week after, but because of the outbreak, they
You
weren't
mean they
able to
were
play them.
originally supposed to play the Bulls, not
Yes,
originally the Sharks? Yeah, okay.
yeah. Well, no, they were supposed to play the Sharks and the Bulls the next week, but they played Sharks 2 weeks in a row.
Okay,
Uh,
because of the Bulls outbreak. Okay,
yeah, because of the Bulls outbreak. Yeah,
I
of
see.
COVID. Yeah. So
No,
yeah.
good
So
exercise for the Sharks. I mean, that you can't
yeah.
get better training and playing against the best of the best, and the British and Irish Lions come. So they definitely, that was good for them to have two weeks in a row playing against the best in the world.
Yep. Yep. And obviously, you had uh, other players come down with COVID. So then, if they had COVID, they had to, they couldn't play the next game or the next week, whatever the situation may be. And that's how actually Marcus Smith. Actually, Marcus Smith entered the picture of the Lions tour, but not because of COVID. Was because Finn Russell had an injury and wasn't able to play the following game, and enters Marcus Smith into the Lions tour.
Yeah,
And as everybody knows, Marcus Smith was talked about a lot during the Six Nations series for England. So yeah,
as was Finn Russell. I mean, both of those, and
Finn,
they got to choose now. That's, I think, one of the headaches for the British and Irish Lions is who's going to be their fly half.
yep,
So do you pick Marcus Smith, who didn't play all the games for England, who didn't even play all the games all the time? He was on the bench sometimes. So are they going to pick him? But there are quite a couple of players that were playing in 21 for the British and Irish Lions, like Aki, Bondi Aki, he's there. You got Itoje, you got Curry. So a lot of players that were there that are just 4 years more experience and better right now. And they're going to, I'm sure, be picked for this year's competition. But here we're talking about players like Finn Russell and Marcus Smith. And this year we're going to be talking about the two exact players and which one is going to be picked for fly off. So it's interesting that they're still there 4 years later and doing well. It's wonderful to see the longevity of the guys.
yes, yes, it is. And um, it was, yeah, it's gonna be interesting because you know I remember you mentioning this rifle and just hearing commentators and podcasters doing the Six Nations. Um, Finn Russell really did not perform well during the Six Nations series. So it's like you said, it's going to be very interesting to see um, Andy Farrell, who is the Ireland head coach, but he took a sabbatical in order to coach. He was chosen to coach the Lions this year. Um, so yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what route he goes at that position, being that Finn Russell really didn't have a great Six Nations
Yeah,
play. So it's going to be very interesting,
yeah, it is.
and especially that one game that he missed like 3 or 4 kicks.
Yeah,
That was pretty bad.
yeah, especially when you a dependable kicker, and if you do what you're supposed to do, what people say, if you're in a team for kicking, you put your kicks over, they lost because of some pretty easy kicks that he missed. So that was sad for Scotland.
Yes. Yep. And there was one game where if he would have kicked it, they would have won.
Yeah.
And but that is like you always say, rifle. Many games come down to one play, one kick.
Yeah,
It's the
especially in
difference in the
today's
game.
rugby, you got to do everything that you do. You got to do it well. Can't have an off day. It's just an off day. Normally you kick 70, 80%, and one day you kick 25. You lose that game.
Yep. And the one last thing that I want to touch upon this 2021 campaign, and then we're gonna switch over to talking about the 2025 um, tour, is the captain Jones, and please forgive me. Don't know how to pronounce his first name. Is it Alwyn? Allen?
Owen Jones, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to figure out how to pronounce his first name, but okay. Yeah, it was interesting because during this tour he got injured playing against Japan, I believe. So
Mm-hmm.
the very first game, and everybody thought that I believe he got a shoulder injury, and everybody thought that he was done for the rest of the tour. But he actually came back. I think it was the third or fourth game, I believe. So yeah, he actually made surprised everybody. He came back and to play in the tour. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No, he's a hard player. Magnificent servant of rugby, I'm telling you for sure. What a man.
yeah. And he's been chosen a couple of times to as captain for the
Yeah.
Lions. So yeah,
Captain Wales for a long time, yeah. So he's a giant of a man in Welsh rugby.
yes. Okay, so yeah, so that was and um as everybody can see here on the top right, we see the players that were chosen for this series, and everybody can see there. Um, so I'm looking. It's says pretty evenly. Uh, yeah, it's pretty even between all the four different national teams. Really don't see any one nation dominating, um, which I guess is the whole thing. It'll be bad if one nation dominated the team.
Yeah, well, we'll see this here what happens because I mean you're going to have very, very few Welsh players, so
Mm,
that's going to be all the guys that represented from Wales they're going to be out, and you're going to have to pick from the other three teams. So it's going to be a very interesting team that they're going to have to come up with, and really excited to see who they choose and the reasons for picking those players that they do. So I'm waiting for
yeah.
that the roster to come out so we can see who made it and who didn't.
Yes, yes, as I am. And interesting that you bring that up, and we're just gonna talk about the 2025 campaign. Is just yesterday, from the time of this recording, um, the coaches were announced officially. There was a couple coaches that um, some new were guaranteed, um, and then the other 3 or 4 coaches were officially announced yesterday for the Lions tour. And so we have Andy Farrell, obviously head coach for Ireland. He's also going to be the head coach for the Lions tour this year in 2025. Um, and the other 5 coaches, uh, I have here the positions they've coached in the past or they've known for. However, I'm reading that nobody knows exactly where these coaches are going to fall within the coaching. For example, I was reading uh, Andrew Goodman in the past has coached backs, but he's also been an attack coach as well. So again, I just put the what they are known for, but doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're going to be coaching during the Lions tour because it's very interesting because in football, as you know, Rifle, you have the head coach, you have the defensive coordinator, you have the offensive coordinator, you have special teams, you have the you know running backs, wide receivers, quarterback coach, and all that stuff. Um, but you don't necessarily see, uh, the defensive coordinator meddling with the quarterback, talking to the quarterback, or whatever the situation would be. It's usually okay. I'm the defensive coordinator. The quarterback, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback coach could deal with him. In
Mm.
rugby, from what I've experienced so far, and from talking to you, rugby is a little different. The coaches, you know, talk a lot to each other, and you have coaches like I've just mentioned, Goodman. You know, he's coached backs, and he's also coached. He's been an attack coach as well. So it's a little different in rugby where you have the coaches, you know, coaching different aspects of the game and talking to each other, as
Yeah,
opposed to the
and
NFL where everything's like, I'm the defensive coordinator. I really
that's
don't
right.
talk to the crew.
The obvious reason for that is in the NFL, if you are playing defense, that's all you do.
Mm-hmm.
You get on the field when the other team is messed up. Your guys have given the ball away. It's now your time to defend. Now that's all you do. You're not going to. It's very seldom that a player, plays both sides. Where in rugby, you all the time you're doing everything. You are the attacker. You are the defender. You are. Now in today's rugby, the forwards push in the scrum and they jump in the line out. But that doesn't mean you're going to not find a forward standing on the wing or someone standing at fullback every now and then. So I mean, they in rugby, every player goes everywhere on the field. He plays every kind of attacking position, every kind of defending position. Therefore, it's very different in football where you have just a specific player plays a specific part of the game. Rugby, everyone does everything, and that's the biggest reason for coaching like this is you got to talk to everyone else. You got to know where everyone else is on the field at what stage and how you slot in on defense, how you slot in on attack. So that would be the reason for that.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Like you say, all 15 players play offense and defense in rugby, so
Yeah,
you have to know both sides of so to speak, both sides of the ball,
right. Yeah,
offense and defense, in order to be successful. So yeah,
yeah,
makes a lot of sense. So like we've mentioned before, starting in 2021, the Lions added a game against another national team, which again, 2021 was Japan. This year, the tour is going to start with the Lions playing against Argentina in Dublin. So, and as you've mentioned, and I'm learning, Argentina over the past decade or so has really improved in their rugby. So that's going to be very interesting to see Argentina take on the Lions.
yeah. They most definitely have, and as you rightly said, this game is in Dublin, so they're playing basically at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it's before they go on tour. It's their big warm up game is against Argentina, and Argentina last year beat South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia. In the championships, they did very well in the World Cup. So yes, Argentina is not a pushover by any means. And on the day, they can beat any team. So it's going to be wonderful to see how they face up against this Lions team. It's going to be some good rugby, I believe.
Yes, yes. We have the Pumas of Argentina. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
going to be like as you say, a tough match for the Lions.
yeah, tough send off.
Yes, and as we see here, we have various club level warm up matches um, as well. So I'm not really familiar with any of the too familiar with any of these teams at the club level for Australia. Um,
All these guys are actually playing now. It's a club, what we used to
mhm.
have back in the day, what we called Super Rugby.
Oh, okay.
So that was the Southern Hemisphere. It was New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia before Argentina came in and they played against each other. We had Super 10, then we added teams. It became the Super 12, then Super 14. Then so that was called Super Rugby. And those guys are currently playing. So, Western Force, obviously, those are all Australian teams. And if you go through those teams, the Queensland Reds, I mean, players that came from these guys just back in the day in a 2000, that era when Australia World Cup winners, they did so well. And the teams that played there, and when Australia played against England in the finals, if you think of the ACT Brumbies there, they had Larkham, who was the fly half, and George Gregan at scrum half. And it was just amazing the players that Australia came up with. So every team, I mean, the Queensland Reds, Waratahs, the Brumbies, they were all just phenomenal rugby teams at that stage. So those teams are currently playing against New Zealand. So New Zealand have the Chiefs, the Blues, their local teams, and they're playing in that competition now. So it will be a good a game for them because it will be the end of their season, kind of. So they're busy practicing now for this big game when the Lions come. So they're going to be ready for them when they do arrive.
Cool, cool. Yeah, speaking to that, that is why um, I believe the players are, well, at least for the Lions, are gonna be announced on the 8th of May. Um, and I'm guessing that's gonna be pretty much the same for Australia because, like you say, they're currently playing at the club level. Many of the players that are probably gonna be, that are gonna be selected for the Australian team are currently playing at the club level.
Yeah. The bad thing about that, though, is that if you take your 23 or 30 or however many you can pick in a squad, those 30 players are not going to be eligible to play for the Western Force, Queensland Reds, Waratahs,
Mm,
so it's going to open the door for new players to come in and play rugby at the highest level against the Lions. So it's a good opportunity for new guys coming through, because when you have the 30 guys that are chosen for the Wallabies, then you've got to fill 30 places in these club sides. So you've got new players that are currently not playing that will have an opportunity to play then. So it's just a good rugby thing all around.
mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Um, yeah, which you know pretty much happens in sports like soccer, where you have the World Cup, you know you have players playing for their nation of origin, but then also they're playing in Europe or South America. So if they're playing in the World Cup, they won't be able to play for their leagues in their
Yeah,
leagues in their
correct.
specific country. So yeah,
Same
very
thing. Yeah.
interesting. And and so from what I'm reading, NFL has a list of roughly about 70 players. Uh, he has to whittle that down to like about 35, 36, I believe. So yeah, it's gonna be, you know, as is with any coach that's uh that's coaching a national team, doesn't matter what sport it is. You have you go in with a list of candidates, and then you have to, wither that down to, in this case, about 35 players. So it's probably, a lot of hours in meetings and watching tape and looking up stats. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting process.
Yeah. At least they've got the coaching staff now, so they can start looking at what they can do to fix that headache they have on their hands.
Yes.
Good headache to have. 70 brilliant players to pick from.
Yes. And the other thing that many are talking about is who's going to captain this year's Lions tour. And I believe the three top names are Itoje, who was the English captain at Six Nations. Um,
Should be Doris,
Caelan Doris, yes, for Ireland.
Ireland.
And
Yep,
then another top candidate is Joe Morgan for Wales, who's the current Welsh captain.
yep.
So yeah, so those are the top three candidates. My bet is on Itoje. I don't know
I
about
would
you.
personally say so because, poor Joe's coming off a terrible record. He's a young player,
Hmm.
so I think it will be very, very difficult for them to be able to send him ahead of guys that have they're going now basically on their third tour. He'll be there for the first time probably. He didn't have a good uh, series with Wales. You've got Itoje that England did well. You've got Doris there who did phenomenal, but then Ireland didn't do well. So at the end of the day, personally, I would think that they would go for the captain that had the team that did the absolute best in this tournament,
Yeah.
and that would be Toje. So that's what my choice would be if I were British and Irish Lion. I would pick him.
All right, my friend. So let's call our let's go to our sporting bet app on our phones and pick Itoje then.
There you go. Yeah.
So yeah, so a lot of decision making that the coaching staff has to make over the next what is it, 7 weeks or so before
Yeah.
they make
Just
the actual announcement.
month and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting to see. And the just the other thing that that's out there is, uh, I mean, not a lot, but some pushback on the coaching staff being heavily Irish. But that's understandable. You know, as a head coach, if you have other assistant coaches that have coached with you and that are great at what they do, that's just common sense, human nature. You're gonna pick them
Yeah.
because the rapport is there. You know how they think. They know how you think. So yeah, so it's just being objective and just looking at the situation. Of course, Andy Farrell is gonna favor an Irish coach who's very good at what they do over other coaches. So yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go, everyone. This is the schedule for the this year's Lions tour, and official players announcement is going to be on May 8th. So something to look forward to. So the last thing I wanted to speak about was, so this past weekend, um, the Six Nations. We thought we were done with the Six Nations, but not yet. So the women's Six Nations began this past weekend, and it's going to be running through April 26th, which is my mother's birthday. So happy birthday, Mom, in the month. So yeah, so this the first week, obviously, England is favored to win series, being they're ranked number one. With this win, they're on a 21 game winning streak.
Yeah,
So
because they're
yeah, I mean
favorites for the
that's
World Cup in the summer as well.
so yeah. So England continues to dominate in
European rugby, yeah.
women's rugby. So yeah, and as you can see with the score here, they pretty much handled uh, Italy relatively easy. Um, and I'm going to be very transparent here. I did not catch all the games. I've watched, here and there of all three games. I didn't catch all the games. Um, but I did catch, I would say maybe roughly half of the England Italy game. And Italy scored, as you can see here, at halftime, it was 33-5. So the second half, English scored a try towards the end of the game. So yeah, it was pretty much a scoreless second half until maybe 4 minutes, I think it was, until the end of the game. So yeah, it wasn't really a lot of scoring in the second half.
Maybe
And
the coach at halftime came out for Italy and said, you ladies better do a better job," and they listened.
yeah, yeah, yes. And again, being transparent here, I really haven't been following the women's side all that often. More following the men's side, but I just wanted to give some love to the women's. And the one play that I'm going to show here is this play reminds me of the France. I'm going to be showing here a play scored by England. And as you can see here, we're in probably Rifle's favorite set play, the scrum here. So we have the England. I forget. I think it was. Well, obviously it's a knock. You scrum if there's a knock on. So there was a knock on by Italy, and so we're starting this play with a scrum. And this is just a thing of beauty. And there we go. Well, actually, she got tackled, but they scored shortly after this. And finally scored a try. So, yeah, I mean, it looked like I was watching France here. And let me just replay here. So we have from the scrum and the speed where they just pass the ball and open up the field. Yeah, it was an amazing play to watch. And yeah, that it was pretty much like I said, an easy day for England. And sorry, Italians,
Yeah,
Italian
shame.
woman. Unfortunately, you're running up against probably a
Best in the
team that's
world.
on a hot streak.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's week one of the women's Six Nations. And yeah, so just wanted to show some love to women's rugby. So with that, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode on the British and Irish Lions tour. Once again, Rifle, I'm looking forward to uh, this summer. It's a lot of great rugby to be played this summer.
Yeah, it's already March now, and the Lions against Argentina is the 20th of, I think, July. So it's 3 months, 3 months, and we got really, really good international rugby again. It's going to be great.
Yes, yes, it is. Looking forward to it. So
Yeah.
with that, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Rifle, as always, thank you, sir.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone, for watching.
And we'll see you once again. Until next time, everyone, take care.
Cheers.
Thank you for watching this episode of Rugby with Rifle. Remember to press the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to support this podcast.